band that really changed things for me, really opened things up for me, and gave me my direction was the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, which was an integrated blues band out of Chicago. Their first album came out in 1965, which I always think of as the year the Beatles played the Ed Sullivan Show, but I think they were there maybe a year ahead of that, 64 maybe. But it's interesting that these two things were happening at the same time. This British invasion's exploding. In the meantime, there's this Chicago blues scene that's exploding, and it was the Butterfield Blues Band that really lit that fuse for that to happen. Again, an integrated blues band, right? So kind of white guys in the front, a black rhythm section, and playing straight up Chicago blues. So the guitarist was Michael Bloomfield, and he became my North Star. I wanted to play just like him, and I think I got pretty close, especially in the early stages. First album was just called the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and Mike Bloomfield was playing one of these right here. This is a 1960 Telecaster. His was a 63, I think, brand new guitar. So everything that had come so far with my own musical development, again, you know, popular music, etc. When I started playing the guitar, very basic, major and minor triads, and the 7th chord. And the Butterfield Blues Band was just a little bit more sophisticated than virtually everything else that was going on in what would be, you know, let's say electric guitar music. I mean, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, you know, all these bands. Butterfield Blues Band was a little bit hipper, and all of them, all of the players in that band were jazz influenced. They had that in their psyche, you know. Even Butterfield was a big fan of Gene Ammons, one of the great jazz tenor saxophone players. And on the cover of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band album, there's a picture of the band standing in front of a store somewhere in Chicago. And then it's like a half picture on the top. Then below that is a picture of the band playing live. Mike Bloomfield's not in the picture. He hadn't joined the band yet, officially. And you see Elvin Bishop, who's the guitarist, who was playing with Butterfield, playing the 9th chord. Well, anyway, he was playing this chord here, this chord voicing. And my friend, the guy who had introduced me to folk blues, he had also introduced me to the 9 chord. And I'm like, wow, that's the chord the guy's playing on the front of the Butterfield album, you know? So the 9th chord just kind of, you know, creates a little bit more sophisticated sound. And once I learned that 9th chord, I couldn't stop playing it. And in the blues, basically, it's a 3-chord form, and, you know, it would be, you know, G9, C9, D9. So every single chord was just that 9 chord with that wonderful inflection. You have that, you know. I did know how to play a 7th chord, but I wasn't playing it in the blues any longer. It was just a straight up 9th chord. Something I'd like to sort of impress upon everyone is regarding my own, again, personal development, you know. I was playing like I would learn one thing, and then I would just play the heck out of it, you know. Like the blues, it's a 3-chord form. You have, and the 9th chord you can play on every one of them, all 3 of them. So I wasn't playing a ton of other things. And I was playing in bands, and I was playing, you know, rhythm and blues, by this time, you know, Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, you know, that kind of music was also prevalent at this point. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Steve Cropper, that whole thing. But that came a little bit later for me. But I guess what I'm kind of getting at here is that I never hesitated, you know, to go full bore into that one little thing I knew, and I would just play the heck out of it, you know? And then finally, maybe somebody would tell me something, or I would see something, or I would, you know, open a book and find something in a book, you know, and I'm like, oh, that! So I would just play the heck out of that, you know? So it wasn't like, you know, learning, oh, you know, this myriad things at once. I just learned like, they were like chunks of music or blocks, you know? And so I just built a house out of them, you know, like that. So, but Bloomfield was the first, literally the first, virtuoso blues guitarist. I mean, it depends, I think, to some degree on how you describe virtuoso, right? But if you talk about Paganini as a virtuoso on the violin, you can't even talk about, you know, blues guitar players as being virtuosos, you know. It's just a whole nother level of technique. But what they have to say and how they're saying it. And Bloomfield was the first really strong electric blues guitar player, electric guitarist of any kind. Before that, all I had personally, you know, was the Beatles, Rolling Stones, you know, the bands that I liked. And they were playing chords and little solos here and there and little lines here and there. But Bloomfield was just blazing over the 12-bar blues form, you know, fundamentally. And he could play a lot of other things too, but the Butterfield Blues Band was an electric blues band and literally was a shock to music at that time. And they were responsible for bringing attention to Muddy Waters, you know, all of the Chicago bands, you know, Otis Rush, Little Walter, Junior Wells, Buddy Guy. These, the Butterfield Blues Band brought the attention to the Chicago blues in that way. And then there was this whole explosion, you know, of incredible electric blues. It was a beautiful thing. And I got to see a lot of that. So anyway, I think that in itself is worth the price of admission. Just that band, that music, awesome.